Hey everyone, I hope everyone is doing great. Today we're going to learn about static languages and dynamic languages. We're going to learn in depth of how are XYZ languages coming under static language or a dynamic language. In the previous lectures, we have discussed about what are types of languages, procedural, functional, and object-oriented. We have discussed these languages in good depth with examples and which are languages come under this. Also, we have discussed about how Python programming language comes under all of these three, which follows the properties of all three, that is procedural, functional, and object-oriented. So kindly check out those videos if you have not checked out. Also follow this playlist so that you don't miss out the ordering of the videos, because every previous concept is very much important in the future. So without wasting time, let's get started. Coming to today's topic, that is static languages versus dynamic language. So without getting into more theory, let us learn with the help of an example. In the previous lectures, we have seen that we can store any value into a variable. How do we store a value into the variable? Assume a is equal to 10. A is a variable which holds the value 10. So this is what we have learned. Now, what happens at compile time or what happens at runtime and all? What is the type of A? A holds integer. If I ask you what is the type of A, the type of A is integer because it holds an integer, that is 10. Now, let's take another example. That is, name is equal to Abhishek. Name holds Abhishek. This name holds Abhishek. The type of name is string or alphabets. It holds bunch of alphabets or string. Let's take another example. That is, marks is equal to 99.2. The variable. What is the type of mask? What is the type of marks? Type of marks is float or decimal. We write a is equal to 10 in our program. How does the machine understands whatever we write? We write a is equal to 10 in our program. That means this is source code or our program. Source code is converted to object code, that is zeros and ones. Zeros and ones are understood by the machine, but we don't understand zeros and ones. So assume we write a is equal to 10 here. That means this a is equal to 10 is converted to zeros and ones, which is understood by machine that the user is telling to assign 10 to A. A is equal to 10 is directly converted, and then here, while running the code, the machine checks if what is the type of A. Type of A is 10. That means it is integer. The machine checks the type. During the runtime, the machine recognizes that A holds an integer. So this was all about dynamic language. Now let's take an example and understand about static language. Int A is equal to 10. Before the compile time only, we are assigning A as integer. Before the compilation of the source code, we are assigning A as integer, so while the program is compiling, during the conversion of source code to machine code, that time only we show the type of A, that is integer. Like now we'll take another example for the same thing. Now anyways we have given int A is equal to 10. Now we cannot reassign A is equal to any string. Like now we have taken int A is equal to 10. That means A is an integer. It is expecting an integer to be stored, which holds integer, that is 10. But now this is expecting an integer to be stored. But now we cannot reassign this to any other string or alphabets, because it expects an integer and it is getting a string, which is what it never expected. This doesn't happen in dynamic language, but this happens in static language, because here the type is identified by the computer before the compilation only or during the compilation. But in dynamic languages, the type is identified during the runtime. Let's consider an example. Int A, that is integer A, is equal to a string, that is bag. Will this give an error or is this correct? Of course, this will give an error because the variable A is expecting an integer, but we have assigned the value of A to be a string. So integer A contains a string, but A expects an integer, but we are giving a string. So this will be an error. This is wrong. How do we get error in dynamic language? Assume we give A is equal to 10. Okay. This is anyways going to check at runtime now. We're going to get the type at runtime, not at compile time. Runtime. Okay. A is equal to 10. Now, if we reassign A is equal to any string, that is bag. Will this give an error? If you feel this will give an error, this won't give an error because we are reassigning. First, A was pointing to 10. Now we are making A point to string called bag. Here we never declare the type. Here there is no type. We have never declared type in the beforehand. Once it comes during the runtime, then only the type is recognized. So initially, if we have given a is equal to 10, and later on, if you change it a is equal to bag, it will still accept, because after you change, then again then the machine reads or checks the type at only the runtime. So again, a is reassigned to a string. First, a was an integer. Now a has become a string. So to know more about this, what's the next lecture? Because learn about how are variables working, what is a variable, how does the type of the variable change dynamically. All this we're going to learn in the next lecture. So kindly stay tuned and check out the next lecture. In dynamic language, we don't have to worry about the specific type previously. As we have seen, we can assign and reassign any type. Like first it was an integer. First a was having integer, but now a contains bag, because we have not given the type prior. So these kind of languages are called dynamic language. Example for this is Python. Examples for static languages are Java and C++ and whatnot. So Python is a dynamic language, whereas Java is a static language. So this is how differentiate between static languages and dynamic languages. And there are some advantages and disadvantages of both the languages. It's not that one is good and one is not good, but both have their own advantages and disadvantages. The type checking is performed at compile time. In dynamic language, the type checking is performed at runtime. So the errors will show up at compile time only in static language, as we are going to see. We declare data type before we use it. For example, int integer a is equal to 10. That means we are already pre-declaring it that we are going to store only integer in a. We're not going to store any string or decimal or float into a. We're only storing integer into a. But coming to dynamic language, it's not like that. First, we can store a is equal to 10, which holds integer, because anyways it is checking at runtime. Now again, later on, we can change it to a is equal to any string like bag. Now a is holding a string, that is bunch of letters. First it was holding integer, but in static languages, once we have told a will contain only integer, then it should only contain integer. If we reassign a as bag or any bunch of letters, so this will give an error. So this is how the error are shown at compile time. Then we declare the data type before we use it, as you saw here, integer. Declaring it before we use the variable, before we assign a is equal to 10, we're already declaring that we are going to store integer only. We're not going to store any other thing. So this is how static languages work, and we have more control. In prior only we are telling here integer should come. That means only integer should come. No other string or decimal should come. Only integer should come. So here we'll have more control. Here it is not the case. First it was an integer. First this was an integer, but now it became a string. String means bunch of letters. Data type of the variable changed drastically, and this and all of this code is executed during runtime. So it can change, but this is not executing during runtime. It executes during the compile time, and the type of this variable is known at the compile time only. But here it is not the case. During the runtime, then once the computer gets to know, oh, a has 10, then it tells that the type of a is integer. This all happens during runtime. So these are the advantages, but you might get the errors during compile time only in the static languages, but in dynamic languages you get the errors during the runtime, sometimes during the runtime. And dynamic languages are easy to type. Example, Python, it has clear and crisp code. Anyways, we have to do no declarations and all. Directly we can assign the variables, reassign the variables, and it is flexible enough. But in static languages, that's not the case. So I hope you guys understood. Stay tuned. In the next lecture, we're going to study all about variables. That is, what is a variable, how does variables work internally, where does it store, stack memory, heap memory. All of these we're going to learn in a very simplified version. So stay tuned, and also do subscribe the channel and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss out on any of the videos. After subscribing, also like the video so that you help the YouTube algorithm to function.